What is going on, y'all? Robert Sykes, KetoSavage.com. Welcome to week 13 of the Reverse Diet Vlog series. So, week 13 is basically the start of the phase 7, which is the Reverse Diet and Beyond phase. Little overview here. So, phase 6 included ketogenic caloric refeeds, and the idea of phase 7 is to basically phase those refeeds out, because ideally at this point you're at a high enough caloric intake where you don't need the refeeds any longer. From a psychological standpoint, you are feeling satiated, you're not fixated on food, and you can just roll with a higher daily intake across the board. That was the plan going into this week. So I had targeted an intake of about 255 grams of fat, 320 grams of protein, and about 20 grams of total carbs. However, what I noticed is that I tried to do a little bit of an experiment. So what I wound up doing is, as you could tell, that protein was very high. So what I had been doing was basically in the morning, I would train, and then my first meal would be a Carnivore Bar and a Keto Brick. And then my second and final meal would be about 40 ounces of venison and a can of cod liver. So very high protein from that venison. Again, 320 grams of protein relative to the fat, which was at 250 grams, 255 grams. And I noticed that that winds up being, let me just tell you exactly what that macro ratio winds up being. So let's see here. That would have put me at about 62% of my total calories coming from dietary fat, which is totally obviously ketogenic still, but much higher protein than I'm typically doing. There's been this big debate right now about satiety per calorie and protein being the most satiating macronutrient. And I've never honestly found that to be the case for myself. I mean, obviously you want to have ample protein, but I've never really found protein to being the main driver for satiety for me. And when I used to do bro dieting way back in the day and my protein was incredibly high relative to my fat, I just was always ravenous. But with my calories being higher, kind of transitioning into phase 7, I figured I'd just make it simple, and then have the 40 ounces of ground beef, or ground venison rather, and then the next week swap that out for an 85-15 beef, and then the following week swap that out for lamb. So pretty much keep everything consistent over the first 3 weeks of this phase 7, just changing where that protein was coming from, which would inherently increase the calories and the fat ratio, with venison being the leanest to start with. Going into this week, I had that venison, and I was just ravenous. Like, it was just not satiating for me. So I wound up having 3 days of the 7 this week that were significantly higher in calories. The first one being on Tuesday. That wound up being 420 grams of fat, 400 grams of protein, 5,500 calories. Friday was 500 grams of fat, 480 protein, 6,600 calories. And then Sunday, 480 fat, 420 protein, 6,100 calories. So 3 days of the 7 being kind of refeeds when this was supposed to be phasing out of the refeeds. Those additional calories came from, honestly, a little bit of a guilty splurge here. Call it weakness, call it whatever you may, but I had some peanut butter, some super clean peanut butter that one of my clients had shipped me from Hawaii. That was like a peanut butter coconut blend. They sent it to me when I was deep in prep, which I couldn't have it then, and it's just been staring at me this whole time. So I had a bunch of that on Tuesday and a bunch of that on Sunday. And then on Friday, we went to my folks' house to have dinner with them, and we had ribeyes, and then Crystal had made some keto cheesecake for my mom because she had just had hip replacement surgery, and I had some of that as well. So I could literally count the number of times I've not had an increase in calories coming just from meat, probably on one hand throughout this entire prep and reverse diet, but that was one of those times for sure. So full transparency there, moment of weakness on my part. Honestly, more of just a splurge. I tracked everything. Obviously, I have all the numbers here to show it. But all that to say, what my average intake wound up being when you take those 3 high days and average them across the week is about 4,697 calories. So 4,700 calories on a day-to-day intake, which is super high. Definitely higher than I need to be. I started the week on Monday at 169.9 pounds, And then I ended the week on Sunday at 172.5. Because of that increase on food on Sunday, I woke up this morning, Monday the 19th, the start of week 14, at 174.4. Granted, some of that is fluid retention from the increase in sodium, but the average for the week is 170.7. And I'm, again, higher than that now because of that acute increase in sodium. So I've wanted to keep my weight around the 170 mark, not really to exceed 175 for the foreseeable future. So I'm knocking on that door right now. So what I need to do is kind of be objective with the fact that my weight is increasing and reel things in a little bit more. So as I describe in the book, as I describe throughout this course, as I describe throughout my content, Phase 7 basically involves gradually increasing the intake week after week once you get through those refeeds in Phase 6. And that's definitely the conservative way to go about it, and that's what I've done in the past. That's what I'd recommend doing. Because I know my body so well, I've been a little bit more aggressive on the front end of that and basically increased pretty substantially this past week, and now I'm going to reel back a little bit from that. But here's the very important caveat. I'm not going to be going into a deficit when I say reel back from that. So many people, they blow out their macros, they feel guilty about it, then they purge or they cut their calories drastically. That is not what you want to do. That is going to be defeating the purpose of what this reverse diet is all about. What I'm trying to do with this reverse diet right now is truly establish my baseline metabolic maintenance intake at this stage in the reverse diet this far post-show, which based off of the numbers that I'm seeing here, I was averaging just shy of 3,000 calories on week 9 per day, 3,600 calories throughout week 11, 3,900 calories throughout week 12, and now 4,600 calories throughout week 13. So definitely a pretty big increase here lately. Rather than dropping my calories and getting into an actual deficit, which for me is going to be, south of 3,000 calories, I'm just going to simply reel back a little bit and stay in a slight surplus / maintenance, but allow my weight to stabilize and just figure out where things are going into the reverse. So what I plan on doing going forward is just bump up that intake and pretty much try and target around 4,000 calories. That'll put me in a slight surplus, should put me in a slight surplus, and give me plenty of fuel, and hopefully I'll be less hungry and more just focused on other things besides food, especially if a good portion of that 4,000 calories is coming from predominantly dietary fat relative to protein, so that I can have more of those satiety-driving signals. So that's what I'm going to be doing going forward. Now, from a training and performance standpoint, I feel really freaking good. I hit 4 plates on squat yesterday. I hit 5 plates on sumo deadlifts today. All of my lifting markers are pretty much now on par with what they were before I ever started the cut in the first place. So I am pretty much back on track from a strength standpoint to what I was prior to starting the cut, but I'm still about 10 pounds down from what I started the cut at, and I'm consuming more calories on average than what I started the cut at. And that is the name of the game, ladies and gents. I'm basically improving my starting and stopping position throughout going through these different phases. And I'll do a full recap on what the big overview picture is at the conclusion of this reverse diet officially. But everything is really looking good thus far. And at the end of the day, I'm trying, I feel guilty about having peanut butter and keto cheesecake. I can beat myself up about that if I let myself. But at the same time, I seem to be okay with having more on occasion. Like I said, I can count the times I've done that on one hand. And as long as I'm honest with myself about what the numbers are showing, which is, hey, look, you're getting pretty close to that 175 mark you didn't really want to exceed. Let's reel things in a little bit, and I can act on that, then I'm okay with it. I'm at peace with it. Now, if I was eating a whole bunch of keto cheesecake and peanut butter every single night and not really being honest with myself with my true intake, what the weight's doing, what the scale's doing, what the body composition's doing, that's when it becomes an issue. So there's that. And again, like I said, the vast majority of all of my high intake days, all of my intake days in general, all of my food is coming from meat and bricks. So there's not really this sense of guilt associated with the food that I'm eating. And I think guilt is what really triggers a lot of people into having disordered relationships with food in the first place. So by simply eating quality food 99.9% of the time, and that 0.1% that I'm not eating quality food, it is still quality food. It's still like the cleanest ingredients. It's just more of a keto sweet food, which is not really what I would consider optimal. But yeah, that's kind of how I adjust things in my mind, deal with things, cope with things, and just make this whole process more sustainable in the first place. Because at the end of the day, I'm not trying to stay super lean right now. I'm not trying to maintain competition level conditioning. I'm trying to maximize strength and performance. And the fact that my strength markers have been steadily getting better makes me feel at peace with the fact that the scale is going up. If I wasn't seeing an increase in strength markers, then I'd be putting on excessive body fat tissue, and it's not really contributing to gym performance, and that's not good either. But I can look at my lifting markers and feel excited and good about what direction those are trending, and that allows me to embrace this increase in scale weight all the better. So there's pretty much that. Let me real quick show you what some photos were looking like. These were taken on Monday, the 12th, and I was 169.9 in these pictures. So again, still holding on to quite a bit of definition. I think a telltale sign for me is just making sure I continue to see this line right here. Like if I'm still seeing that, I'm feeling pretty good with things. And I'm seeing that in the pictures. Just a lot more fullness throughout the arms, the chest, the legs, the hamstrings, just a lot more fullness. Another telltale sign for me, let me go back here, is you can see it. It's still there, but it's getting a little bit more vague, is that vein across the shoulder cap. I did an Inbody on Monday the 12th, and the Inbody, when I took these pictures, has me at 6% body fat. So according to the Inbody, I'm at 6% body fat right now. I'm not so sure I'm that lean. I don't really think I'm over 8. I'm probably 7. If I had to guess, I'd say I'm probably 7. I'll try and get a DEXA scheduled here in the next few weeks, and then we'll have a little bit more of an accurate marker there. Plus, I'll also get a caliper test done, but I'm probably around 7% would be my guesstimation. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a wrap on the macros and the photos. I am playing around with a new app for tracking macros, Chronometer, which is a very popular one. It also tracks micronutrients very well. I'm going to continue to use my macros plus throughout the remainder of this reverse diet, but then I may switch over to that going forward. I've been kind of playing around with it. So if I do, I'll obviously show y'all what I'm seeing behind the scenes with that and why I would switch. But so far, been just holding steady, staying the course, eating quality foods, ramping up the calories, ramping up the training intensity, and all things are going as planned. So thank y'all for tuning in. We'll see you next week for week 14.